Emma stepped out of the taxi and looked up at the tall glass building. It was one of the most famous luxury car dealerships in the city. Expensive cars lined the shiny floors inside, each one looking like a dream. People usually came here wearing suits, designer shoes, and gold watches. But Emma wore simple jeans, an old jacket, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair was messy from the wind, and she carried a small, worn-out purse. As Emma pushed open the heavy glass door, the warm air inside wrapped around her. Loud music played in the background, and the smell of leather and new cars filled the air. A few smartly dressed salesmen stood near the reception, laughing among themselves. Their expensive colognes mixed with the air, strong and sharp. The moment Emma walked in, everything slowed down. The salesmen turned to look at her. Their smiles faded. One of them raised an eyebrow. Another whispered something to his friend, and soon soft laughter echoed through the room. They looked at her simple clothes, her tired face, and her old purse. In their eyes, Emma didn't belong there. "She can't even afford a test drive," one salesman said loudly, making sure Emma could hear. His voice was filled with fake pity and hidden laughter. A few others chuckled behind him. Emma heard them, every word, every whisper, every laugh. But she didn't say anything. She didn't even look their way. She walked slowly between the rows of shiny cars, her fingers lightly brushing the doors. A black sports car, a red luxury SUV, a silver electric sedan. Each car looked more expensive than the last. The salesmen watched her like hawks, their eyes rolling in disbelief. One of them, Mark, the tallest and the loudest, leaned against a desk and crossed his arms. He smirked as he watched Emma move from car to car. "Maybe she's lost," Mark said in a voice loud enough for the others to hear. "Or maybe she thinks this is a museum." The men laughed harder this time. A few even pulled out their phones, pretending to check messages but secretly recording short videos of Emma. Some thought it would make a funny post later. Poor girl dreams big. Emma paused in front of a beautiful black SUV, its surface shining like a mirror. She looked at the price tag without blinking. It was worth more than most people's houses. For a moment, her fingers rested on the handle, as if she was thinking of opening it. Mark couldn't take it anymore. He straightened up and walked toward her, wearing a fake smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was the type who loved easy sales and hated wasting time. And to him, Emma was a waste of time. "Hey there," he said in a sweet but fake voice. "Can I help you with something?" Emma turned to him and smiled politely. "Just looking, thank you." Mark's smile twitched. He quickly looked her up and down. "Of course," he said, a hint of mockery in his voice. "Feel free to look around. Though, if you're looking for something more in your budget, we do have a used section. Much cheaper, much easier to afford." Emma didn't react. She just nodded politely and moved to the next car, ignoring the sting of his words. But inside, she felt a small fire light up. Not of anger, but of quiet determination. Mark turned back to his friends and shrugged dramatically, making them laugh again. "Maybe she's buying for a friend," another joked. "Yeah, or maybe she's here to clean the windows," another one added. The laughter grew louder, but Emma stayed focused. She circled the room slowly, studying each car as if she had all the time in the world. To anyone else, she looked like a lost tourist. But if someone paid close attention, they would see the calm in her eyes, the patience, the quiet confidence. A few customers nearby noticed the scene. A woman in a blue dress frowned at the way the staff treated Emma. But she said nothing, just shaking her head and walking away. In places like this, people like Emma were invisible, unless they had a black credit card in their hand. Emma finally stopped in front of the biggest, most expensive car in the dealership, a custom-made luxury car, only a few in the whole country. She stood there for a long moment, reading the details. The salesmen exchanged looks. Some whispered bets. How long before she leaves? 5 minutes. No, 3. But Emma didn't leave. She stayed, calm, steady, and then, slowly, she reached into her pocket, pulling out a small black phone. She tapped the screen once and lifted it to her ear. The salesman watched, curious and amused. Calling for a ride, one joked under his breath. Emma spoke into the phone, her voice low and calm. "It's time," she said. "Send the papers." She ended the call without saying another word. The laughter around the room slowly died down. Something about her tone, something about her calmness. It didn't fit the picture they had painted of her. Mark frowned, feeling a strange twist in his stomach. For the first time since Emma walked in, the room felt different. Heavy, uncertain. And Emma? She simply smiled to herself, standing quietly beside the million-dollar car, waiting. Because soon, everything in that dealership was about to change. Mark watched Emma with narrowed eyes. Something about her calmness bothered him. People like her were supposed to get embarrassed and leave quickly, not stand there with a small smile, acting like they owned the place. Still, he shook off the feeling. She's probably calling someone to pick her up, Mark thought, laughing to himself. He decided to have a little more fun. He didn't like it when people wasted his time, especially people who, in his mind, didn't belong here. Mark strutted over to Emma, pretending to be helpful. "Well, miss," he said loudly so that everyone could hear, "have you found something within your budget?" A few other salesmen snickered nearby, pretending to busy themselves with paperwork. Some customers gave quick glances, sensing the tension but choosing to stay silent. No one wanted to get involved. Emma turned to Mark, her face still calm, her eyes patient. "I'm just looking," she said softly. Mark nodded with fake kindness. Of course," he said, his voice dripping with fake respect. "But just so you know, these cars are quite expensive. We also have some pre-owned models outside. Very affordable. Very practical." The words were sharp, hidden under a fake smile. He was treating her like she was too poor to even dream about these cars. Emma smiled politely, saying nothing. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just kept looking. Mark hated it. He expected her to show embarrassment, maybe even leave. But her silence felt powerful. It made him feel small, even though he stood taller than her. He decided to push harder. "You know," he continued, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret, "banks usually don't finance certain customers for these vehicles. You might want to check your options before getting your hopes up." The insult was clear. He was telling her, "People like you can't afford dreams like this." Still, Emma showed no anger. She simply nodded again and turned away, looking at another luxury car. The laughter behind Mark grew louder. Some of the other salesmen were pretending to hide their amusement, but it was obvious. One even muttered under his breath, "She's probably gonna ask for free coffee next." Mark's phone buzzed. It was his group chat with the other salesmen. A message flashed. "Recording this. This will be gold." Someone had taken a short video of Emma looking at the million-dollar car and posted it in the group with the caption, "Dream on, sweetheart." They thought it was funny. They thought it was harmless. But none of them knew what was coming. Meanwhile, Emma slowly walked outside to the dealership's patio area. She stood by the glass wall, her back to them, making another short call. "She's probably ordering an Uber," Mark joked loudly. More laughter. Inside, customers were starting to feel uncomfortable. Some frowned. One woman whispered to her husband, "They're being really rude." But like always, no one stepped in. Emma ended her call and stood still, hands in her jacket pockets. She gazed up at the dealership's logo shining in the afternoon sun. Mark saw this and smirked. She's probably taking one last look before she goes back to wherever she came from. He wasn't even trying to hide his cruel smile now. One of the junior salesmen, Tom, felt a little uncomfortable. He wasn't as cruel as the others. He whispered, "Maybe we should just leave her alone." Mark laughed loudly. "Come on, man. We're just having fun. She's not buying anything. She's wasting our time." Tom stayed quiet. Deep down, he didn't like it. But he was new. He didn't want to lose his job by speaking up. Back inside, Mark made a big show of pulling out brochures for used cars and waving them around as Emma came back in. "Here you go," he said, flashing a big fake smile. "Our special deals just for you. Very cheap monthly payments. Very easy approval." Emma looked at the brochures but didn't take them. She simply said, "No, thank you." Mark forced a laugh. "No need to be shy. We work with all kinds of customers. Bad credit, no credit, low income. We help everybody." The insult was loud now, impossible to hide. Emma looked at him for a long second, her eyes deep and calm. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult him back. She just said quietly, "I won't need financing." Mark blinked, confused for a moment. Then he laughed even louder. "Oh, of course not," he said sarcastically, rolling his eyes. His friends laughed harder, shaking their heads. They had no idea. No idea at all. Because outside, just down the street, something was happening. Something that would wipe those smug smiles off their faces. And Emma, she simply tucked her hands into her pockets, leaned casually against the wall, and smiled. Waiting. Just waiting. Because in just a few minutes, everything in that dealership would change forever. Emma stood calmly inside the dealership, ignoring the rude whispers and fake smiles. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She just waited. Outside the big glass windows, the street was busy. Cars passed by. People walked their dogs. Taxis honked in the distance. No one inside the dealership knew that Emma had just made a very important call. A call that would change everything. Inside, the salesmen were still laughing and joking. Mark, feeling proud of himself, leaned against the front desk and said loudly, "Bet she doesn't even have $5 in her purse." The others laughed again. Mark opened a drawer and pulled out a toy model of a small car, a cheap, plastic one, and placed it on the counter. "Here, maybe she can afford this one," he joked. More laughter filled the room. Emma turned and looked at the toy car for a second. She smiled, but not because she found it funny. She smiled because she knew they had no idea who they were dealing with. Suddenly, the dealership's front doors swung open. A group of men in sharp black suits entered. Their movements were quick, serious. They wore sunglasses even though they were inside. Each man had a small earpiece in his ear, moving like they were part of a secret mission. Everyone in the dealership turned to look. The mood changed instantly. The laughter stopped. The salesmen straightened their backs. The customers whispered to each other. The man in front, tall and powerful looking, walked straight toward Emma without hesitation. He stopped right in front of her and spoke respectfully. "Ma'am, everything is ready. Please let us know if you would like to inspect the vehicles now." Emma nodded simply, like this was normal. Mark's mouth fell open. "What the?" he whispered under his breath. The man in the black suit turned and faced Mark. "We need access to the VIP section immediately," he said coldly. Mark stuttered. "VIP section? That's for special customers only." The man showed a small, shiny card. It was a platinum elite card, something only billionaires or top CEOs carried. Only a few existed in the entire country. Mark swallowed hard. The manager of the dealership, a short man named Mr. Lewis, ran out of his office, confused by the scene. "What's going on here?" he demanded. The man in the black suit stepped aside and motioned toward Emma. "This is Miss Emma Johnson," he said. "She is the majority owner of Johnson Enterprises and the new owner of this dealership." Dead silence filled the room. Mark felt like the ground had been pulled from under him. The other salesmen stared at each other, their faces pale. Mr. Lewis's face turned red with panic. He rushed to Emma, bowing slightly. "Miss Johnson, welcome. If we had known you were coming, we—" Emma raised a hand calmly to stop him. "No need for fake apologies," she said softly. "I prefer to see how people are treated when they think no one important is watching." Mark's legs felt weak. His heart pounded loudly in his ears. She wasn't a customer. She was the boss. The owner. Emma turned to Mark, who now looked like he wanted to disappear. "You treated me like trash because of how I looked," Emma said, her voice steady but full of power. "You laughed at me. You insulted me. You made fun of me for being poor, all without knowing anything about me." Mark opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Emma continued, "You showed me who you are, and now I'll show you who I am." At that moment, more black SUVs pulled up outside. Men in suits began unloading boxes of documents, contracts, and new ownership papers. Mr. Lewis, sweating heavily, asked nervously, "What are your instructions, Miss Johnson?" Emma looked around slowly, letting the silence stretch. Then she said calmly, "First, fire every single salesman who laughed at me or mistreated me today. Right now." Mark's heart stopped. He tried to speak, to apologize, but the man in the black suit stepped forward. "You heard the lady," he said sharply. Security guards appeared as if from nowhere. Mark and his friends were quickly surrounded. Mark dropped his toy car to the floor in shock. Emma turned away, not even giving them another glance. They weren't worth her time anymore. Instead, she walked toward the million-dollar car she had been admiring earlier. A salesman who had stayed respectful the whole time. Tom, the young one who had felt uncomfortable, stepped forward nervously. "Would you like to test drive it, ma'am?" Tom asked politely. Emma smiled warmly at him. "Yes, please. And after that, I'll be buying it. In cash." Tom's eyes widened. "In cash," he repeated in amazement. Emma simply smiled and nodded. As Tom rushed to get the keys, the entire dealership buzzed with new energy. People whispered, stunned at the truth. The woman they had laughed at, the woman they had disrespected, owned everything now. And those who had looked down on her, they were out on the street before the hour ended, jobless, humiliated, forgotten. Emma slid into the driver's seat of the luxury car, her smile soft but full of victory. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't argued. She had simply shown them the truth, and the truth was more powerful than any insult. Emma sat behind the wheel of the luxury car, her hands light on the steering wheel. The leather smelled rich, and the soft engine hum filled the quiet space. She adjusted the seat slightly, smiling at how perfectly it fit her. Outside the car, Tom stood respectfully, holding the door open. He had been polite from the start, and Emma noticed it. As she drove the car slowly out of the dealership for the test drive, people inside watched her with wide eyes. Customers who had earlier ignored her were now whispering, pointing, amazed. Even some of the remaining staff couldn't hide their shock. Mr. Lewis wiped the sweat from his forehead, trying to stay calm. He followed Emma and Tom nervously, not wanting to make another mistake. Inside the car, Tom spoke carefully, trying not to upset her. "Ma'am, I just want to say, I'm sorry for how you were treated earlier," Tom said, his voice soft. Emma glanced at him and smiled gently. "Thank you, Tom," she said. "You were the only one who showed basic respect. I noticed that." Tom let out a small breath of relief. He wasn't sure why, but hearing those words meant a lot to him. Emma drove the car smoothly around the block. She didn't need a long drive. She already knew she wanted it. She just wanted a moment to enjoy the feeling of victory, the quiet kind, the kind that didn't need yelling or revenge. After a short while, Emma turned back toward the dealership. As she parked the car in front of the glass doors, a brand new banner was being rolled out above the building. It read, "New Openly Johnson Enterprises." The workers had moved fast, wanting everything ready before Emma officially stepped back inside. A small crowd had gathered outside too. Passers-by, curious onlookers, and even some people filming on their phones. News was traveling fast. Tom helped Emma out of the car. She handed him the keys with a polite nod. "Prepare the paperwork. I'll take it today," Emma said kindly. Tom's face lit up. "Yes, Mom. Right away." Inside the dealership, things had changed completely. The mood was tense. The laughter was gone. The arrogance was gone. Mark and the other salesmen who had mocked Emma earlier were nowhere to be seen, already fired and escorted off the property. Emma walked inside calmly, every step filled with quiet power. Mr. Lewis rushed up again, holding a clipboard with shaking hands. "Miss Johnson," he stammered, "please, allow me to personally assist you with anything you need." Emma looked at him carefully. "You run this place, Mr. Lewis?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," he said quickly, nodding so hard it looked painful. "Well, I used to, but now I serve you." Emma smiled a little but said nothing. Instead, she turned to the man in the black suit, her head of security, and said calmly, "Review the entire staff. Keep only those who treat every customer with respect. I don't care how many cars they sell. I care how they treat people." The man nodded firmly. Mr. Lewis's face turned pale. He knew his days might be numbered too. Emma continued walking through the dealership, her steps echoing off the polished floor. She stopped in front of a young woman at the reception desk, a woman who had also laughed at her earlier. Emma looked at her, raising one eyebrow. The receptionist swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "Do you welcome back, ma'am?" she stammered. Emma didn't answer. She simply turned to her security chief again and said, "Add her to the review list too." The woman's face crumbled. The message was clear. No more second chances for those who judged others based on looks. By the time Emma reached her new office, the former manager's luxurious corner space, she could feel the entire building holding its breath. She entered the office slowly, standing by the big window, looking out over the city. It felt right. It felt earned. Years ago, when she had first started her small business out of a tiny apartment, people had laughed at her too. They had said she would fail. They had said she wasn't the right kind to succeed. But Emma had worked harder than anyone. She had stayed calm when others mocked her. She had stayed strong when doors slammed in her face. And now, she owned those doors. She owned the building. She owned it all. Emma sat down behind the manager's desk, her desk now, and smiled to herself. Outside, Mr. Lewis, the receptionist, and all remaining staff stood nervously, waiting for her instructions. Emma pressed the intercom button and spoke in her calm, powerful voice. "Please gather all employees in the showroom. We're starting a new chapter today," she said. "A chapter where respect is not optional. A chapter where kindness is not weakness." Her voice echoed through the building, powerful and clear. Tom smiled quietly to himself. Maybe, just maybe, this place was about to become something truly special. And it was all because one woman stayed calm when others laughed at her. One woman who had the strength to let her success speak louder than their insults. The staff gathered slowly in the shiny showroom. Some stood with heads down, ashamed. Some looked nervous, stealing glances at Emma's new office door. A few, like Tom, stood tall and hopeful, wondering what would happen next. Emma sat quietly behind her desk, watching them through the large glass wall of the office. She could feel their fear, their confusion. And honestly, it didn't make her happy. Emma didn't want people to be scared. She wanted them to learn. She wanted to build something better, something real. Finally, after a long minute, she stood up and walked out into the open floor. Her steps were calm and confident. Her eyes were steady, meeting the eyes of every person standing there. The room went silent. Not even a whisper floated in the air. Emma stood at the center of the room, with the new Johnson Enterprises banner shining above her head. She took a deep breath and spoke in a clear, strong voice. "I know many of you are confused," she said. "I know many of you were not expecting this today." People shifted uncomfortably. Some couldn't even meet her eyes. Emma continued, "Earlier today, I walked into this dealership. I wasn't dressed fancy. I didn't look rich. And because of that, some of you thought you knew everything about me." The silence grew heavier. Emma's voice remained calm, but firm. "You whispered, you laughed, you judged." She paused, letting the words sink deep into their hearts. "But you were wrong," she said simply. "You didn't see a poor woman. You didn't see a lost customer. You saw what you wanted to see." She turned slowly, looking at each of their faces. "You didn't know that I am the new owner. You didn't know that I have worked my entire life to build something great. You didn't know that today you were being tested, not in how well you could sell a car, but in how you treat people." Some workers looked ready to cry. Tom stood straighter, proud that he had passed that invisible test. Emma continued, "Today is a new beginning for this place, and a new beginning comes with new rules." She lifted a small piece of paper from her pocket and read the first rule aloud. 1. Every customer will be treated with respect, no matter how they look, dress, or speak. Heads nodded slowly. She read the second. 2. No laughing, whispering, or judging behind a customer's back. Some employees turned red, knowing they had done exactly that. Then she read the third. 3. Those who treat others with kindness will rise. Those who don't will not stay here. Emma lowered the paper and looked around the room. "This is not just a car dealership anymore," she said softly. "This is a place where everyone matters." She smiled gently, but there was steel behind her smile. "If you stay, you are agreeing to these rules. If you cannot follow them, you are free to leave now. No hard feelings, but there will be no second chances." Everyone held their breath. No one moved. No one spoke. Emma could feel it, the weight of her words pressing into their hearts. Some looked scared. Some looked ashamed. But some, like Tom, looked inspired. Finally, a voice spoke up. It was Tom. He stepped forward, his hands slightly shaking, but his voice strong. "Mom, I'd like to stay. I want to be part of this." Emma smiled warmly at him. "Good," she said, "because we're going to build something better together." Slowly, other voices joined in. "I want to stay too," said a woman from the finance office. "I promise to do better," said a young salesman. One by one, employees stepped forward, pledging to follow the new path. Emma nodded, feeling a soft warmth in her chest. Change was happening. Real change. She knew some would leave later, maybe because they couldn't adjust. But those who stayed would help create something powerful. Emma clapped her hands once, gathering their attention again. "We start fresh today," she said. "Training will begin tomorrow. Everyone will learn how to treat people with dignity. We're not just selling cars anymore. We're building trust. We're building respect. We're building a family." There was a soft murmur of agreement through the crowd. Hope filled the room where only arrogance had lived before. Emma turned to Tom and handed him a new title, written simply on a small card. "Tom Parker, Customer Relations Manager." Tom's eyes widened. "Me," he whispered. "You," Emma said, smiling. "You have the heart we need here." Tears filled Tom's eyes. He had only dreamed of such a thing. And now, because he chose kindness over cruelty, his dreams were coming true. As Emma looked around the dealership, a quiet pride filled her. They had judged her by her appearance. They had doubted her worth. But in the end, she showed them that real power comes not from shouting, but from standing tall, smiling quietly, and letting success do all the talking. And today, her voice and her vision were the loudest things in the room. The next morning, the dealership didn't look the same. Big changes had started overnight. The walls, once filled with cold silver and harsh white lights, now had warm colors and beautiful paintings. The floors sparkled. The smell of fresh flowers filled the air instead of just new leather and cold metal. Outside, A new sign was placed above the door. "Welcome to Johnson Motors, where every person matters." Emma arrived early, dressed in a smart, simple suit. She didn't need flashy clothes to show her power anymore. Her presence alone changed everything. Tom stood at the entrance, greeting every employee with a friendly smile and a respectful nod. The other staff followed his example. For the first time, kindness was in the air. At 9 a.m. sharp, Emma called everyone into the showroom again. But this time, the feeling was different. There was no fear, only hope. Emma stood in front of them with a large smile. "Today, we start something new," she said warmly. She pointed to a board behind her, where she had written 4 new words: respect, honor, service, family. "These are not just words," she said. "They are who we are now." The employees listened carefully. Emma explained the new rules in more detail. No customer would ever be ignored again. No one would be judged by their clothes, their accent, or their background. Every customer would be welcomed like an old friend. Tom helped by sharing examples. If someone walks in looking tired, maybe they just came from a long shift. Maybe they're working 2 jobs to buy a car for their family. Tom said passionately, "Treat them like heroes, not like problems." The staff nodded, many looking inspired. Emma brought in a professional trainer too, a kind woman named Mrs. Carter, who specialized in teaching respect and communication. Mrs. Carter smiled warmly and said, "Remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you can't see. Be the light in their day." The day was full of role-playing games, learning how to greet customers, how to listen with real care, and how to solve problems with patience. At first, some staff struggled. Some weren't used to smiling so much or offering real help without thinking about money. But slowly, something beautiful started happening. When a tired mother walked in with her small child, a young salesman knelt down to talk kindly to the boy first, making him laugh. When an elderly man wandered in, looking confused, the receptionist guided him gently, offering him a chair and a cup of tea. And when a teenage girl came in to buy her first car, nervous and alone, Tom personally helped her, treating her like his own little sister. Word about the changes spread fast. By the end of the week, customers were leaving happy, not just because they bought cars, but because they felt seen, respected, and valued. Reviews online started to change too. Instead of complaints, there were stories. "I walked in thinking I would be judged. Instead, I was treated like family. They cared about me, not just my money. This place feels like home." Emma watched all of it quietly, her heart full. She knew the work was only beginning. She knew it wouldn't be perfect every day. But she also knew that she had planted something strong, something real. One afternoon, as Emma sat in her office, Tom knocked on her door. "Come in," she said. Tom stepped in, holding a small gift bag. "This is for you, Mom," he said, smiling shyly. Emma opened it carefully. Inside was a small, simple plaque. It said, "Thank you for believing in kindness. From all of us." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. She stood up and hugged Tom warmly, surprising him. "Thank you, Tom," she whispered. "You and everyone here, you are the real treasure." Outside, the sun poured through the big glass windows, bathing the dealership in golden light. It wasn't just a business anymore. It was a place where people healed, where dreams were respected, where hope lived. Emma looked around and smiled deeply. She had turned laughter behind her back into respect before her face. She had turned doubt into admiration. She had turned cruelty into kindness. And she had done it not with anger, but with quiet, steady strength. The dealership had changed, but more importantly, so had the people inside it. And Emma knew this was only the beginning. A few months later, the dealership looked nothing like it once had. Bright flowers lined the entrance. Children laughed and played in a small corner set up just for families. The staff smiled genuinely, offering help before customers even had to ask. And customers. They kept coming back, bringing their friends, their families, and their stories. Johnson Motors had become more than a place to buy cars. It had become a place where people felt respected and loved. Emma sat quietly in her office one afternoon, sipping tea and reading the latest customer letters. Each one was a story of someone who had been touched by kindness. One letter read, "I was having the worst day of my life. I only came in to look, but your team made me feel like I mattered. Thank you for reminding me that good people still exist." Emma smiled, her heart full. Just then, Tom knocked on the door and peeked inside. "Emma, someone's here to see you," he said, his eyes wide. "Who is it?" she asked, setting her tea down. Tom hesitated. "It's Mr. Wallace." Emma's smile faded slightly. Mr. Wallace, the man who had laughed at her, judged her, and tried to humiliate her on that first day. Emma stood up calmly. "Send him in," she said softly. A moment later, Mr. Wallace walked in, looking nervous. He wasn't wearing his expensive suit today. Instead, he wore simple clothes, and his eyes didn't carry the same arrogance. He stood awkwardly in front of Emma's desk, holding his hat in his hands. "Miss Johnson. I mean, Mrs. Johnson," he stammered. Emma said nothing. She let the silence stretch, making him feel the weight of the moment. Finally, Mr. Wallace took a deep breath. "I came to say, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I judged you. I treated you like you were nothing. But you've built something beautiful here." Emma watched him for a long moment. In his eyes, she saw true regret. Not fake, not for show, but real. She spoke gently, but firmly. "People make mistakes, Mr. Wallace. What matters is what you do after the mistake." He nodded quickly. "I'd like to ask if you would consider giving me a second chance," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I want to be part of this. I want to learn." Emma looked at him carefully. Many would have enjoyed rejecting him. Many would have thrown his laughter back in his face. But Emma wasn't here to feed her pride. She was here to build. She stood up, walked around the desk, and looked him in the eyes. "One chance," she said quietly. "Earn it." Tears filled Mr. Wallace's eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. Emma offered her hand, and after a moment of surprise, he shook it firmly. It wasn't about winning. It was about teaching, lifting, healing. As Mr. Wallace left to start his new training, Tom walked back in, smiling proudly. "You really believe in people, don't you?" he asked. Emma chuckled softly. "I believe people can change, if you give them a reason to." She looked around the dealership, the smiling faces, the laughter, the kindness. It hadn't been easy. She had been laughed at, judged, doubted. But she never lost her belief in herself or in the power of respect. Today, Emma didn't need to shout that she was the owner. She didn't need to prove anything. Her success spoke louder than any words ever could. As the sun set outside, painting the sky gold and pink, Emma walked out into the showroom. She smiled at a young couple buying their first car. She laughed with a little girl who showed her a drawing she made. She shook hands with an old man who said this dealership reminded him of better times. And in her heart, Emma knew. She wasn't just selling cars. She was building dreams. She was building trust. She was building a legacy. A legacy that had all started because she chose to stay calm, stay strong, and let her true worth shine. They thought she was nobody, but 5 minutes later, she owned their entire world. Months had passed since Emma changed the dealership, but her mission wasn't finished. One evening, after a long and happy day at Johnson Motors, Emma sat in her office, thinking. She stared at the wall where pictures of smiling customers now hung. Families, old couples, young students, all leaving the dealership with hope and pride in their eyes. But Emma knew there were more people out there. People still facing judgment. People still being laughed at because of how they looked, where they came from, or how much money they had. She couldn't change the whole world alone. But maybe she could inspire others to try. That night, Emma opened her old laptop and started typing a letter. It was an invitation to every business owner in town. The letter said, "Come hear my story. Let's talk about respect, about kindness, about real success. Let's change how we do business together." She booked the town's biggest community hall for the event. Tom and the staff helped her organize everything. When the night came, Emma stood backstage, feeling a flutter of nerves. Would anyone even come? Would anyone listen? But when she peeked through the curtain, her breath caught. The hall was full. Business owners, employees, customers, young people dreaming of starting their own companies. They were all there, waiting for her. Emma stepped onto the stage. No fancy lights, no loud music, just her and her story. She spoke simply, from the heart. She told them about walking into Johnson Motors that first day, about the laughter behind her back, about being judged before she even said a word. The room was silent, hanging onto every word. She told them how she didn't fight with anger, how she didn't shout or threaten, but how she changed everything by believing in respect, in kindness, in patience. Emma ended with a simple challenge. Build businesses where every person is seen. Build places where no one is made to feel small, not just for money, but because it's the right thing to do. The room erupted in applause. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others looked thoughtful, determined. Afterward, many people came to thank her. One woman said, "You made me believe I can start my own business." An older man said, "I'm changing how I run my store, starting tomorrow." Emma realized something beautiful that night. It was never just about one dealership. It was about a movement, a spark, a wave of kindness growing bigger every day. Later that night, Tom found Emma standing alone outside the hall, looking at the stars. "You did it," Tom said, smiling. Emma smiled back. "No," she said softly. "We did it. And now, it's just the beginning." The stars above seemed to shine even brighter. Emma had turned her pain into power. Her quiet strength had changed lives. Her small steps had made a big difference. And somewhere out there, someone else who felt like nobody was about to realize they were everything.